Ever wondered why some companies just seem to take over the world, while others, well, they shrink and disappear? It's not luck, it's all about strategy. And today we're going to crack open the playbook that businesses use to compete and, hopefully, win.
Okay, so let's start with a little puzzle. Why is it you can probably name the big tire companies on one hand, but you couldn't possibly count all the restaurants just in your city alone? The answer to that question, well, it unlocks the fundamental secret of how entire industries actually work. So, Section 1, the business playground. See, before any company can make a move, we have to understand the rules of the game they're playing in. This brings us right back to our tires and restaurants. Some industries, like steel or, you guessed it, tires, have what we call high entry barriers. You need a ton of money, specialized know-how, so only a few big players can even afford to compete. That makes the industry concentrated. But for restaurants, the entry barriers are super low. Pretty much anyone can give it a shot, so you've always got new players jumping in, and that creates a fragmented market.
And get this just perfectly illustrates how fragmented that world is. Even McDonald's, the biggest restaurant chain on the entire planet, serves less than 1% of all restaurant meals eaten worldwide. That's just a wild thought, right? It shows that in a fragmented market, even the absolute giants are just a tiny piece of a massive, massive pie.
All right, Section 2, the urge to merge. So, once you're on the playground, what's the classic move? Get bigger, of course.
And this is the world of mergers and acquisitions, or M&A as you'll hear it called. It's how companies expand by buying up their competitors, merging with equals, or, and this is a really interesting move, through something called vertical integration. That's where you don't just buy your rivals, you buy your whole supply chain.
Think of it like this. A car company starts out, just making cars. Simple enough. But then it buys its tire supplier. Okay, now it controls a key part. Then it goes even further and buys the car dealerships. Now it controls how the cars are actually sold. That's vertical integration in a nutshell, controlling the whole process from the factory floor all the way to the customer. Now for decades, this was the goal. Grow, acquire, and control everything. But this constant expansion led to a huge, huge problem. Companies became these massive, unwieldy conglomerates, sprawling empires that were so complicated they were almost impossible to manage profitably. And this led to a massive shift in how people thought about strategy. All that old wisdom, it got flipped completely on its head. The very strategy that was once seen as the only path to victory was suddenly seen as a huge mistake. Which brings us right to Section 3, getting lean, getting focused. This is the modern playbook. So how does a big, messy conglomerate fix itself? Well, it basically goes on a diet. It starts selling off or divesting any part of the business that isn't absolutely essential to its main mission. By getting rid of all those distractions, it can finally concentrate on its core business, the one thing it does best. The goal? To become more manageable and, of course, a lot more profitable. This whole strategy of focus really boils down to one critical recurring question, the make or buy decision. For everything that's not our main thing, our core business, should we make it ourselves or should we just buy it from someone else who can probably do it better? Now the choice looks simple, but the implications are huge. If you make it in-house, you keep total control, right? But if you buy it from a supplier, you free up your own team to focus on what they're truly great at, and you get to leverage all that outside expertise. And let me tell you, the trend today is clear. More and more companies are choosing to buy, which lets them stay nimble and focused.
All right, let's wrap this all up with the key takeaways.
It really all comes down to this. First, you have to understand the playground you're on. Is it concentrated with a few big players or fragmented with tons of small ones? Then, you can recognize the classic moves, like M&A, that companies use to grow. But finally, you see the modern countermove, realizing that true strength often comes from focus, not just from size. Which leaves us with the central question every business leader is facing today. Is the future of business all about being bigger, or is it about being smarter? The answer to that is going to define the next generation of winners and losers. Thanks for digging into this with me.